Hey guys, this is Alex Bertson. I'm making a new video on the Michael teachings. I wanted to cover the different aspects of the Michael teachings because I haven't seen a lot of content on YouTube currently covering uh, these teachings. So I'm going to focus on the roles in Michael teachings. And what Michael teachings is essentially is it's a channeled body of knowledge that talks about our soul's characteristics and also our reincarnational cycle and what lessons we're learning at different times. It's possible in the Michael teachings to get a chart channeled of all your characteristics that are aligned with you. So you'll have in your chart, you'll have essence, which are the characteristics that stay with you throughout all your lives. They're part of your soul. For your whole cycle, your whole reincarnational cycle on Earth. And then there's something called overleaves, which are characteristics that are only applying to you in this particular life. So when you get your chart channeled, you'll get your essence and your overleaves. So what I'm going to be talking about is your essence. And the main thing about essence is you need to know about the roles. And I'll just get into the roles overview here. Here are the different roles. There's 7 of them. So in the Michael teachings, you have your own role, which stays the same throughout all your lives. You also have an essence twin, which is a soul that you bond with, that also has their own role and their own overleaves and essence characteristics. And then you also have some secondary characteristics of different roles. So you'll have some primary characteristics as your role, and then you'll have some secondary ones in your chart. So everybody's a mix of a few different role types. There's different energies for each one. So the roles, like I said, there's 7 of them, and there's 4 axes. They're called inspiration, expression, action, and assimilation. So the inspiration types deal with the inner world only, just focusing on the inner world, which is of the emotions. Expression types deal with bringing the inner world and expressing it into the outer world. Action types just focus on the outer world and are very productive. And then assimilation is the neutral axis that just builds knowledge and studies and absorbs experiences and organizes knowledge. So for each of the 3 main axes, the inspiration, expression, and action, there's 2 roles for each. The assimilation axis is neutral, and there's only 1 type. That's the scholar. But for inspiration, there's server and priest. Servers are what's called the ordinal type. They're the ordinal inspiration type. Ordinal means that you deal with one-on-ones instead of groups. The cardinal types, which would be the priest and the inspiration axis, those ones deal with groups. So you can see the type on the top with the lighter colors, server, artisan, and warrior. Those are all ordinal one-on-one types. The ones on the bottom, priest, sage, and king, are all cardinal types, and they deal with addressing groups. And the scholar is the neutral type, which can go either way. They can deal with one-on-ones or be more expansive and deal with groups. So that's the different axes. What's interesting about the roles here is the pairs that are on the same axes they like to work together. So servers and priests bond well together. Artisans and sages bond well together. And actually, warriors and scholars are a natural bond for each other instead of the king. And the reason this is because there's actually a system of numbers assigned to each of these roles. So these numbers here deal with which types are the most ordinal and which ones are the most cardinal. So number 1 is the most ordinal, which is server. Number 2 is second most ordinal, which is artisan. And then so on and so forth. So the most cardinal is king, and the least cardinal is server. Or you can say in the opposite way, the most ordinal is server and the least ordinal is king. But this is what's interesting about this is that the first number, server, because it's most ordinal, there's actually more servers than the other types. That's the most populous, and I'll show you this to you in a second. Second is next most populous, and so on. Another thing that is interesting about this is, like I was saying in the last slide, there's natural pairings for the types. And what's cool is you add the numbers together of the different types. So, and if they add up to 7, that's a natural pairing. Those types do well together. So if you can look at server, to get to 7, you have to add 6, and type 6 is priest. So servers and priests do well together. And then for number 2, you have to add 5 to get to 7. So that's artisan and sage. They work well together. And then for warrior, the scholar is number 4. So adding 4 plus 3 equals 7. So those are the natural types that bond well together. Another interesting thing about this is that each of these types aligns with one of the chakras. So the first chakra, which is the root chakra, aligns with server. The second chakra, the sacral, aligns with the artisan. The third chakra, or solar plexus chakra, with the energy centers, that one's aligned with the warrior. The heart chakra aligns with the scholar. The fifth chakra, the throat chakra, aligns with the sage. The sixth or third eye chakra aligns with priests. And the seventh or crown chakra aligns with the king. So there's this natural pairing that goes on here with all these types. The other last thing to address here is that, and I'll talk more about this in a different video, but there's different soul ages that we go through. And this is the order in which you go through them. These different types align with the different soul ages. So the first soul age aligns with the server, it's infant or survival. The second soul age is structure, which aligns with artisan. Third soul age is achievement, which aligns with warrior. Fourth soul age is relationship, or mature soul age, and that's number 4, the fourth one. And the final stage that you go through in the reincarnational cycle on Earth, or any planet that you're incarnating on, is the old soul age, or the context focus, which is aligns with the sage. The last 2 soul ages happen on the higher planes, so that would be transcendental and infinite. And that transcendental aligns with the priest, which is when you're merging with your greater soul families. And the king is the infinite soul age, which is where you're merging with even a bigger soul family, a bigger group. So those are the roles by the numbers. And here is the ratio of how many, like what percentage of the population is each role. And as you can see, the numbers from it's organized by the numbers. So the first number 1 is the most populous, like I was saying. You can see server is 25% of the population on Earth are servers. 22% are artisans. 17% are warriors. 14% are scholars. 10% are sages. 8% are priests. And 4% are kings. And the reason this is because the more ordinal types are, you need more of them to address more people. And the more cardinal types, like the sage, priest, and king, address big groups. So you don't need as many of them to do the job. So people who are addressing groups in the cardinal, yeah, you just don't need as many souls doing that. So that's the reason why there is this natural ratio for how many souls are each type, each role. So now I'll go into some details about each role so you have a better understanding of what they're like. The first role is server. It's the ordinal inspiration role. And inspiration is deals with the emotions in the inner world. Common good. It wants to help others in concrete ways and be of service to others. They're a mid-frequency fluid role. Each role has a different frequency, so the ones that are lower are more grounded, and the ones that are higher frequency are more light and might tend to go out of their bodies more often. But the server is a mid-frequency one, so it's fluid. It's kind of in the middle. It's not super grounded or super light and airy, so it's more fluid. There's something called psychic inputs that all roles have, and it could be one or more inputs. What inputs are different. It's like different things you can focus on at one time. So it's like you have information coming in from, in this case, 2 different sources. So you have, for servers, one of those sources is consensus reality, which is what applies to all the types. If they have one psychic input, then consensus reality is the one focus. But if they have more, they have them focusing on different things. In the case of the server, the second input is for their vision of the common good. So they're always in touch with, how can I help other people? How can I be of service to others? How can I make people feel cared for and loved and stuff like that? So that's some of the server stuff. And for each role, there's a positive pole and a negative pole. When you're in your positive pole, you're functioning in love and higher consciousness. In the negative pole, it's lower consciousness or fear. So when servers are in their positive pole, they demonstrate service, and they're caring, warm, loving, inspiring, capable, other-directed, competent, trustworthy, friendly, nurturing, and devoted. In their negative pole, they're in bondage. They're victimized, enslaved, martyred, and self-sacrificing, manipulating, mushy, frustrated, domineering, covert, underhanded, subservient, overextended, and a doormat. So something interesting about the Michael teachings is there's all these different characteristics that align with the different roles. It's their different energies. So these are the natural overleaves for the server. So this is what aligns with that axis, with the ordinal inspiration role. I'll make videos about each of these different items on here, explaining what each of these are at some point. But I just wanted to list them here just so you can see what they are. For the server, the natural goal is reevaluation. The attitude is stoic. Mode is reserve. Center is emotional. Obstacle is self-deprecation. Body type is lunar. And the focus is survival, which is the infant soul age. So all these, what's interesting about all these, they all deal with the inner world and the emotions. For example, stoic is focused on the inner world and doesn't care so much about what's happening in the outer world. Reserve is where you hold your energy inside, in reserve. The emotional center is the natural centering out of four centers actually. There's emotional, intellectual, physical, and moving. There's a couple other centers too, like the higher emotional and higher intellectual, but you can't orient in those naturally. Obstacle, self-deprecation. Body type lunar is the lunar body type, lines with the server. And like I was saying, the focus of survival is natural fit for servers because they want to take care of people in concrete ways. So it would be like, they would want to be of service to people, providing shelter, clothing, food, things like that. So it's a natural alignment for them, for the servers. Survival is the first soul age, also called infant soul age. So some famous servers are Dalai Lama, Queen Elizabeth II, Sally Field, Ray Liotta, Paul McCartney, Vladimir Putin, Eleanor Roosevelt, Susan Sarandon, Travis Scott, Wesley Snipes, Jimmy Stewart, and Mother Teresa. So now let's talk about priest. It's the cardinal inspiration role. So it's like the server, but it deals with groups, and it's a little bit different. Instead of seeking the common good and being more concrete in their interactions, like more personable, they deal with bigger groups and they seek the higher good. So they're focused on people's spiritual growth, and they want to inspire people towards the higher things. They need to feel that they're on a mission, inspiring others to take on challenges and grow. They're a high-frequency, airy role, so they'll feel light to other people when they have high frequency. And usually if you have high frequency, especially priests, they tend to go through lessons really quick. They want to complete the curriculum very fast. So they push themselves to grow and get through things really quickly. And that's what the high frequency does. They also have two psychic inputs. One is for consensus reality, and one for their vision of the higher good. So that's some of the priest stuff. The positive pole for priest is compassion. So they're compassionate, inspirational, caring, enthusiastic, healing, warm, guiding, emotionally connected, nurturing, visionary, empathic, and humanitarian. The negative pole is zeal. So they're zealous, fanatical, feverish, unworldly, evangelical, flaky, proselytizing, irrational, non-practical, reactionary, bigoted, and overextended. So these are the natural overleaves for the priest. It's the goal of growth, the attitude of spiritualists. Growth, the goal of growth really fits with priests because priests are all about growth. It's what they want to see happen with all the people that they address, and for themselves as well. They want to see growth. Attitude spiritualists, they have a very spiritual outlook to things, and they're focused on the possibilities of what can be achieved, and it's a very inspirational attitude. They're also passionate, so the passion mode fits really well. The centering is higher emotional, which you can get in certain moments, but you can't orient in higher emotional all the time because it's too high frequency of energy for us to deal with on the day-to-day all the time. Obstacle is arrogance, which is a fear of being judged or feeling vulnerable, but it can be stereotypically arrogant or they can be shy. Bi-type is Saturnian, which deals with leadership, and priests are naturally set up for leadership positions, I would say. The focus is, or soul age, is transcendental, which is the stage after the old soul age, or the context focus. So this is when you're starting to merge with your entity, which is your soul family, which is a group of 1,000 souls, roughly. At that stage, you're starting to merge your energies and experiences with your soul family and start sharing and becoming more of a cohesive unit. So that happens after you finish incarnating on the planet. Once you've finished your reincarnational cycle, then you go to the higher planes, and then you're in the transcendental soul age. Some famous priests are Helena Blavatsky, Edgar Cayce, Aleister Crowley, Wayne Dyer, Bob Dylan, Pope Francis, St. Francis of Assisi, Sigmund Freud, Mahatma Gandhi, Carl Jung, Byron Katie, Martin Luther King Jr., John Lennon, Freddie Mercury, Barack Obama, Bernie Sanders, Alan Watts, and Paramahansa Yogananda. So you can see these are very, a lot of these people are spiritual figures involved in spirituality in some way. Some of them are musicians, and that's the way that they can communicate their inspirational ideas. Some of them are involved in politics, and politics is a good way to inspire people towards the higher things, and having a vision is really important. So there's a good mix of people, but some of them are actors too. Some priests, you actually can see, you're not necessarily always aligned to certain jobs as these roles, but they tend towards certain things. And that's what's most common here, you can see, is that they're either spiritual, they're political, or they're in music, or something like that. So now let's talk about Artisan. It's the ordinal expression role, so that deals with one-on-one connections more than groups. It seeks originality. They're creative and sensitive. They love to invent new things and ideas by playing with structure and form. They're another high-frequency airy role, like the priests, but they function very differently than the priests do. What's interesting about the roles for artisan and priests, because they're high frequency, they tend to go out of their body and get out of touch with their body the most out of any type. But they also have very lucid dreams. Because they have this sensitivity towards the high frequencies. So that's more of a possibility for them. But they have a harder time being grounded. And artisans are super sensitive because they have 5 psychic inputs. So they can take in 5 different pieces of information at once from different sources. And what I've noticed for this is it seems like some artisans have been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD. Because I guess their attention is in several different places all the time, and they can't really manage it. So it's a lot to take in. They're so sensitive because they're pulling in all of this information at once, and they can't really filter through all of it so easily. So they have to deal with that and figure out how to get through with that, having so many inputs. But it really helps them with creative work because they can take different things from different places and at once and merge the ideas across different pieces of information. It's a pretty crazy talent to have. So in the positive pole for artisans, it's creation. They're spontaneous, innovative, original, eccentric, imaginative, visionary, inventive, Gamesters, mood creators, they're different and they're paternal. And the negative pole is artifice, where they're completely confused, deceptive of others, irresponsible, moody, self-indulgent, false, impulsive, bizarre, depressive, soft, and weak-willed. So these are the natural overleaves for the artisan. Artisan aligns with the intellectual centering. So a lot of this stuff deals with like, a lot of it's dealing with structure as well, because that's what the artisan is all about. But it's very intellectual too. So the goal of discrimination is very intellectual, but it's about learning to say no to things, you know, to have better discrimination in terms of what you bring into your life. Attitude is skeptic, where they doubt things and then they investigate to get more understanding of certain things, to test if things are true or not. Mode is caution, so they deliberate before they take action on things. And like I was saying, centering is intellectual. Obstacle is self-destruction, which is actually a fear of loss of control. Body type is jovial, which is a very positive, expansive energy. And the focus is structure, which is the second soul age, known as the baby soul age. But that's when you integrate into society and follow rules, and structure is the biggest focus then. And artisans are all about structure. That's the key word for them. So that's what the artisans do. So if you look at the famous artisans, you see there's a lot of actors and musicians and stuff. So there's David Bowie, Eric Clapton, Kurt Cobain, Leonardo DiCaprio, Walt Disney, Robert Downey Jr., Lady Gaga, Michael Jackson, Scarlett Johansson, Daniel Day-Lewis, George Lucas, Marilyn Monroe, Alanis Morissette, Jim Morrison, Brad Pitt, and Vincent van Gogh. So these types are all these people are very sensitive and creative. And some of them are able to create whole worlds just through their imagination, like Walt Disney or George Lucas. Some of them get into acting, and they like to play with the form of acting, and a lot of artisans tend to be more like method actors as opposed to sages, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Sages tend to be their own, like be themselves. They have a very particular personality that they express. And artisans like to play with the way that they express themselves, and take on different personalities, essentially. So that's the artisan. The sage is the cardinal expression role, the expressive type that addresses groups. They seek insight. They're creative and expressive. They need an audience to receive their abstract expression, wisdom, and insight. So for them, performance is really big. You'll see a lot of actors as sages. You'll see a lot of comedians as sages. Musicians as sages. Communication is the biggest thing for them. They need an audience. So they're a mid-frequency fluid role, like the server. They have 3 psychic inputs, which is less than the artisan, which is 5, but 3 is still a lot. That's the second most of any of the types. So they're really sensitive too, and they can get overwhelmed by having too much energy, like information coming at them from different sources, because they're so sensitive. So in their positive pole, they're in expression. They're expressive, wise, entertaining, perceptive, dramatic, humorous, inquisitive, unruffable, informative, colorful, knowledgeable, communicative, optimistic, lighthearted, and fun. In the negative pole, they're in oration. They're oratorical, deceptive, attention-grabbing, loud, tasteless, overly dramatic, egocentric, boring, intrusive, gossipy, lying, slippery, and irresponsible. So these are the natural overleaves for sage. So the goal of acceptance aligns with the sage, which is about saying yes to experiences and feeling, you know, which is usually with the goal of acceptance, you have a lot of hard things that you deal with. You have to learn to say yes to everything. It makes you kind of a nice guy attitude because you have to just say yes and accept everything and be positive about it. Attitude of idealist. Sages are you can say they're idealists. They're out of any attitude, that's the one that fits for them. Power mode is about having strong expression. Centering a higher intellectual. That's the higher frequencies for intellectual centering. You can't orient in that normally, but you can visit that sometimes. Obstacle is greed, which could be for more attention or more experiences, which kind of covers up kind of a feeling like a hole inside, essentially. So you have all these different experiences to fill up that hole. Body type is mercurial, and which is like the planet Mercury. So which is very heavily about communication, and that's what sages are all about. The focus is context, or the old soul age, which is about building perspective and understanding, kind of philosophizing about everything that you've experienced, and then sharing that with people and what you've learned. So one thing to note about these overleaves here that you see here, if you're one of these roles, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have these same overleaves. You're not going to have the goal of acceptance and the attitude of idealist. It'll probably be different, but these are what naturally align with those types. So that's what's important to note. That's why I show them, because it gives a little bit more, a little bit more clues to what the type is like by looking at all these overleaves. Some famous sages are Joe Biden, Jack Black, Michael Caine, Jim Carrey, Bill Clinton, George Clooney, Stephen Colbert, Tom Cruise, Robert De Niro, Morgan Freeman, Tom Hanks, Samuel L. Jackson, Michael Keaton, Bill Maher, Bill Murray, Jack Nicholson, Conan O'Brien, and Oprah Winfrey. And you can see, all these types are very expressive. So, they all have very particular personalities. They're all known for their personalities. Some of them get involved in politics, like Bill Clinton and Joe Biden. But a lot of them are actors. There's also musicians that are sages as well. But if they can have any platform to communicate and have an audience, that's where they feel the most fulfilled. They can also go through being a writer is also another way of expressing and communicating that they focus on. So now let's talk about the action types. There's the role of warrior, which is the ordinal action role. It seeks challenge. It's the most physical role. It's productive, practical, efficient, and they're goal setters. They like to set goals and then achieve the things that they want to achieve. They make lists and go down the list and just complete everything. They're very disciplined. They're hardworking. They're low frequency, solid role, so they're very grounded in their bodies. They're very present. they kind of have this like macho instinctive energy about them that you can feel. Um, they only have one psychic input for consensus reality, so that means that they focus on one thing at one time, which is an advantage in some sense because um, you can it's easier to focus in some sense rather than having so many different inputs, which is harder to focus and get things done. So warriors and versus artisans, they have to take a different approach to how they deal with their tasks and what they want to complete because they have only one input. It's a little bit different. There's several ways to get things done, but it's a much a different way to have one input versus five, like the artisan. It's so much different. Okay, so the positive pole for warrior is persuasion. They're productive, structured, organized, aggressive, confronting, focused, truthful, resourceful, family-oriented, protecting, maternal, defending, skilled, grounded, proud, principled, good at moving centered skills. They're good with their hands, they're practical, reliable, loyal, and they love challenges. And the negative pole, they're in coercion. They're bullying, narrow-minded, intimidating, pushy, emotionally withheld, overwrought, stressed, subjective, hot-tempered, overbearing, blunt, tactless, looking for struggle or conflict, argumentative, abrasive, hectoring, unforgiving, mistrustful, brutal, suspicious, devious, evasive. So here's the natural overleaves for the warrior. The goal is submission, which is where you submit to somebody else's leadership or direction, and then you devote yourself to them. Attitude is cynic, which is where which is is being cynical, doubting things, saying things aren't so or whatever. So, and then the mode is perseverance, which is persevering through tasks, making sure that when you start something, you go all the way through it and you complete things. Centering is physical, so they're really in touch with their body, and the energy in their body, gut feelings, and different sensations. That center is actually also known as the sexual center, and warriors are very sexual, so that's the natural overleaf for warriors, because they're the most like physical in their bodies and sexual type. They need sex more than the other types do. Their obstacle is martyrdom, which is where you feel like a martyr, like you do all these things for people and you're not really ever appreciated, and all stuff like that. Body type is Venusian. That's a very like sensual type. So sex is a big thing with that body type too. Focus is achievement, and warriors are all about achievement. This is when they feel most natural, is when they're in the young soul age, which is what the achievement focus is, the young soul age. So that's where they're just focused on getting shit done, and it's very natural for them. They feel most comfortable during that time. Some famous warriors are Jessica Alba, Bono, Johnny Depp, Eminem, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, George Gurdjieff, Adolf Hitler, Joan of Arc, Michael Jordan, Maynard James Keenan, Joe Rogan, and Mike Tyson. So now let's talk about King, which is the other action role. It's the cardinal action role. And they seek mastery. They're all about excellence and implementation, and they like being in charge. So they want to have some kind of kingdom to rule over, in some sense. They like being in the authority position, and they basically see all the other roles as opportunities, and they can see where all the talent and abilities from the different roles can best be used. So they like to delegate and then also figure out how everybody's going to work together to complete things, get things done. But they're the ones in charge usually. It's just a natural place for them to be. There's not that many kings. Like I was saying, 4% of the population is kings. But even then, that doesn't mean that they have all the leadership positions. There's a lot of kings that are not in leadership positions. But the main thing they seek is mastery, so they seek excellence in what they do, being as disciplined and working hard and stuff like that, just like warriors. Kings aren't as intense as warriors in a like blunt, aggressive way, but they do have some aggression tied to them too, actually. They're a low-frequency solid role like warriors, and they also have one in psychic input for consensus reality, just like warriors. In their positive pole, they're in mastery. They demonstrate excellence. They're gentle, natural leaders, magnanimous, charismatic, strategists, self-assured, stable, well-rounded, commanding, informed, visionary, good at delegating, good with money, charismatic, gets along with everyone, inspires loyalty, commitment, and devotion. In their negative pole, they're in tyranny. They're demanding, controlling, intolerant, ruthless, overbearing, extravagant, unrelenting, and extremely arrogant. So this is the natural overleaves for a king. Goal is dominance, which is all about being in a leadership position of authority and leading other people. Attitude is realist, so you see what can be realistically achieved. Mode is aggression, where you have a lot of output to get a lot of shit done. Centering is moving, which is like the physical center, but it's energy and movement. So when you're taking action on things, that's the center that you're in. Obstacle is impatience, and it's a fear of missing out, essentially. Body type is martial, which is another like very grounded, earthy type body type. It's very sexual as well. The natural match for the martial body type is the Venusian, which is lines with the warrior's overleaves, natural overleaves. And the focus is the infinite soul age, which is the final one. That's where you combine with your cadre. And a cadre is a group of 7 entities, and an entity is a group of 1,000 souls. So it's like it's your larger soul family. During that time, that's when you're merging with them, with the greater soul family, the cadre, and becoming more of a cohesive unit. It's the final stage that you're in before you before you complete your cycle completely, and take a break for a while until you start a new cycle on a new planet with new essence, role, and different overleaves for each life. Famous kings are Alexander the Great, Christian Bale, Buddha, James Cameron, Sean Connery, Gal Gadot, Ryan Gosling, Jesus Christ, Steve Jobs, John F. Kennedy, Kid Cudi, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Patrick Stewart, Donald Trump, and Kanye West. So you can see a lot of these people they're pretty intense, and they're all about mastery. They have this kingly vibe about them. They kind of are either leaders or in some way, or they're in authority positions. Not always, but that's a common thing to see. That's what they're all about. So this is the last type. It's the neutral type, the scholar. It's the neutral assimilative role. Assimilative means like you basically like absorbing experience, and scholars are very sensitive to what's they want to investigate and they're very curious. They seek knowledge, but they want to collect and organize information and knowledge for the world. They see many perspectives and best understand the other roles because they're neutral, so they can see other perspectives really easily. So they can relate to all different roles the best and understand them because of their neutrality. They need something to study. What's interesting about scholars is um, they also have low frequency and the solid earthy role, just like warriors and kings. They also have one psychic input for consensus reality, but they're driven by different things. They're just very curious and they want to have experiences and really investigate them deeply. So what's interesting about them is they actually get energy stuck in their system from way back when, from probably from like many past lives of things that they've been just trying to investigate and feel inside their bodies, inside their auras in their system. And it's so hard, it's difficult for them to let go of things because they just want to investigate experiences so deeply. Like a scholar could get involved with drugs for a whole lifetime just to study it, just to have the experience of what it's like to be addicted to drugs, as just an example. But they're able to be in like harsh conditions, like physical conditions, and get through them okay. So they're all about just absorbing experiences, and they want to organize the information for everybody else from what they study, essentially. So that's scholar. The positive pole for scholars: knowledge. They're understanding, knowledgeable, truthful, thorough, practical, integrating, neutral, mediating, grounded, solid, curious, observing, clarity, logical, adventurous. And the negative pole, they're in theory, but they're just theoretical, abstract, confused, intellectualizing, reclusive, withdrawn, pontificating, overbearing, tedious, boring, slow, dull, dusty, fastidious, illogical, invisible, and arrogant. So essentially, they've got knowledge from real experience that they've had that they provide to the world, or they're not really integrating their theories, whatever their knowledge is they come up with, and it doesn't really work in practice. That's kind of the negative pole for scholars. So here's the natural overleaves for scholar. The goal is flow, where you learn to go with the flow and let things come to you. When you're in the goal of flow, things kind of come naturally to you that you need, like a roof over your head, clothing, food, whatever it is. That comes to you more naturally. You're more kind of taken care of. It's the neutral goal. All these are the neutral characteristics. Attitude is pragmatist. It's very practical. Just does what's most efficient. Observation mode is where they sit back neutrally and just observe things happening. Center is instinctive, which you can't orient normally. Everybody has the instinctive center functioning all the time. So it's not one you can orient in as your default necessarily. Obstacle is stubbornness, where they can be just stuck in their ways, their own way of seeing things, and are kind of afraid of change. Body type is solar, which is the neutral type. That relates. It's like the sun, so it's the one in the center that everything else revolves around. All the other types, so can be in the center of things when you have the solar body type. And focus is relationship, which is the mature soul age, which is where you deal with the emotions and the inner world. And that's actually when scholars are doing their best They don't naturally express emotion so readily or easily, but they can really deeply explore the relationship soul age or mature soul age. They get really deeply involved in exploring the inner world. So it's a natural, it's the natural soul age for them. Some famous scholars are Ben Affleck, Beethoven, Jeff Bridges, George Bush, uh, Deepak Chopra, Daniel Craig, Albert Einstein, Anthony Hopkins, Thomas Jefferson, Jennifer Lawrence, Michelle Obama, Daniel Radcliffe, William Shakespeare, and Eckhart Tolle. So that's it. That's all the different roles. I covered the different axes, which are inspiration, expression, action, and assimilation. Um, there's two for inspiration, two for expression, two for action, and just one type for assimilation. I talked about their the relations that they have with each other, the ones that are on the same axes, such as the inspiration types, naturally bond with each other, um, and the other types too, like the expression types, naturally bond with each other. Um, uh, to find out your role, you have to get a chart channeled, and who I would go to for that is Shepherd Hoodwin. His website is SHEPHERDHOODWIN.com, and you can order a chart from him and figure out your role. But you can also study these different characteristics that I covered in here and try to figure out which role you are, and try to figure out your friends that you know, and see which characteristics align with them. So that's the basic thing. This is the main characteristic of Michael teachings. The main focus is the roles, and your role is going to be the same role throughout your whole reincarnational cycle. It doesn't change per life, so you're always going to have the same role. You're going to choose different overleaves, so you're going to choose different, goals and centering, attitudes and modes. Those will all be different. Body types will be different. But the role will always stay the same. So it's the most important part of your chart, to see the roles. And you'll have secondary roles, influences as well in your chart. So not everybody's going to be just one role and just be that, because everybody has some secondary that makes them a little bit more unique. But that's about it for the roles from Michael teachings. I'm going to do some more videos covering the different characteristics of, such as the goals and the attitudes. I think the next one I'll do is covering the soul ages and talk about how that all works, what each soul age is, and also talk about how that relates to other theories that exist out there, such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and also spiral dynamics, which really aligns with the soul ages really well too. So that's it for now. I hope this was useful for you, to help try to figure out and identify different roles in the world. So that's it. Please like and subscribe if you like this stuff. More videos on Michael teachings to come. I'm also going to do some more videos on celebrities through the different personality type systems I study. I also do Vedic astrology and human design a little bit. So I'm going to make more videos with that, and including Michael teachings charts from the different celebrities. So So that's it. Thanks for listening. Catch you next one. Bye-bye.